On a stormy early morning, a young black man from a poor neighborhood was on his way to the most important job interview of his life, but suddenly along the way he came across an elderly man stranded with a flat tire, even though he knew it could cost him his chance. He still stopped to help and ended up missing Finerview. What he didn't know was that old man was a powerful, mysterious. See how had happened next changed his life forever. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you watching. From we Laveto, hear your thought. The streets of Southbridge always look the same in the early morning, cracked sidewalks, flickering street lights, and the low hum of old cars crawling past worn-down apartment blocks. The rain from last night still clung to the pavement, turning the gutters into shallow streams. Up ahead near the bus stop, a group of construction workers sipped coffee from paper cups, their voices low, their eyes heavy. A few glanced Marcus' way. The stares lingered, not curious. Judging, Marcus Reed adjusted his tie with stiff fingers as he walked by, feeling the weight of those looks settle on him like a brick. He knew what they were thinking. A young black man in a suit walking through Southbridge at 6 o'clock in the morning. Must be a court date, not a job interview. He'd seen that expression. His swole life doubt dressed as indifference. He kept walking, 26, tall, lean, built like a runner, though he hadn't had time for the gym, and Munch's skin dark, smooth, sharp cheekbones. His mom always called his serious face even when he was a kid. This morning, his jaw was tight, lips pressed together in a thin line. The suit wasn't new, faded navy, tailored just enough to hide the fact it came off the clearance rack 2 years ago. It clung to his shoulders the way his nerves clung to his chest, tight and easy, unrelenting. He straightened the cuffs. The silver cufflinks glinted softly in the gray morning light. His mother's gift, his grandfather's old ones. They didn't match suit, but they meant more than clothes ever could. Marcus checked his reflection in the dark window of Feckener laundromat. The eyes staring back were steady, but he couldn't quiet the knot twisting in his gut. Today wasn't just a job interview, it was Finerview, Whitmore and Blake Financial Group, downtown Chicago. Glass towers, marble floors, 6-figure salaries, and a strict unspoken rule: you came from the right schools, the right families, the right side of town. Marcus came from Southbridge public school, no trust fund, no legacy, but a perfect GPA from Chicago State. Years of grinding through part-time jobs and a letter of recommendation from Professor Myers, Feenley professor who ever looked past where he came from as he headed toward the train station. His phone buzzed, a text from his mom. "You got this, baby, just be you. I love you." He swallowed the tightness in his throat, tucked the phone away, and kept walking. It didn't matter what those men at the bus stop thought. It didn't matter that the people downtown would look at his skin, his address, and draw their own conclusions before he opened his mouth. All that mattered was getting in that building, shaking the right hands and showing them he belonged there. The train hissed to a stop at Monroe Station, the doors sliding open with a mechanical sigh. Marcus stepped out onto the platform, his polished shoes clicking against the damp concrete. The cold morning air smacked him in the face, carrying the bitter smell of wet asphalt and the faint metallic bite of the city. He tugged his coat tighter around him and started toward the exit, weaving past sea of commuters with their heads down, shoulders hunched, coffee cups steaming in their hands. Everyone moved fast, focused, the way they always did downtown. Suits, briefcases, heels tapping, eyes glued to phones, but even in their rhythm, Marcus noticed something shift. Heads tilted toward the sky, phones lifted, frowns formed above the rooftops. The clouds had darkened thick and low, churning in slow, angry spirals that didn't belong to an ordinary spring morning. A gust of wind swept down the avenue as Marcus emerged onto the sidewalk, nearly ripping the portfolio from under his arm. He clutched it tighter, his pulse skipping. The Pagus inside. Extra resumes notes, market research, everything he'd worked months for, stacked neatly between thin sheets of leather. His heart pounded harder now, not just from nerves, but the way the air felt heavy, charged, like the city itself was holding its breath. Ahead, through the breaks in the crowd, he could see the shimmering glass tower of Whitmore and Blake rising into the gray sky. It looked impossibly tall from here, the upper floors vanishing into the low-hanging clouds. He checked his watch, 8:22 a. The interview was at 9 sharp, still plenty of time. Then came the first drop of rain, if it. His cheek cold and sharp, followed by another on the back of his neck, then more, hundreds, thousands falling. Fast TV, relentless. In seconds it turned into a downpour that soaked his coat, flattened his hair, and sent people scattering beneath awnings and into coffee shops. Umbrellas flipped inside out, car horns blared as traffic slowed to a crawl. Marcus cursed under his breath and ducked beneath the narrow awning of a bakery, pressing his back against the cold brick, watching as the street flooded with water and frustration. The storm wasn't just rain, it was punishment. The weather app had said light showers. This was biblical. He pulled out his phone, fingers slipping on the wet screen, and opened the rideshare app. Nothing. Not a single driver inside. Refreshed, still nothing. The storm had shut the city down. His jaw clenched. Ash checked the time again. 8:31. Still possible if the rain let up. But isn't it got worse? Water pulled along the gutters, spilling over curbs. Flyers and trash whipped through the air like confetti from some cruel parade across the street. A man slipped and cursed, his briefcase skidding into the flood. Running along the sidewalk, people ducked into storefronts, their suits and designer coats soaked through. Marcus exhaled, trying to steady the tightness building in his chest. It wasn't over yet. He could still make it. It was just water. He zipped the leather portfolio inside his coat, pulled the collar high, and stepped out into the storm, head down, legs moving fast. Every step was a splashes. Polished shoes now drenched, slapping against pavement, slick with rain. His hair stuck to his forehead. His shirt clung to his back, his tie twisted beneath the soaked lapels of his jacket, but he kept moving because this was more effin' just a job interview. It was escape. It was proof. It was everything. A yellow taxi approached the curb up ahead, brake lights flaring. As it let a passenger out, Marcus sprinted, water flying from his shoes, calling out as he raised his hand. But just before he reached it, another man, a tall white guy in a camel trench coat, shoved past him and dove into the back seat. The door slammed. The car sped off, spraying dirty water in its wake. Marcus stopped dead in the street, fists clenched at his sides, jaw tight with frustration. He barely heard the blaring horn as a delivery van swerved around him. His eyes burned, his chest heaving from more than just exertion. He wasn't stupid. He knew how the city worked, who got the cab, who got the benefit of the doubt, who got the doors held open, and whoa, got looked at like they didn't belong. He pressed on, wiping the rain from his eyes, ignoring the ache in his legs, the gnawing pit in his stomach. His mind screamed, keep going, just get there. AO can still fix this. The tower was close now, just over the next few blocks. He could see the faint glow of the building's lobby lights through the rain, so close it made his chest tighten with desperate hope. Then he saw the car. It was parked just off the main street. Sleek and black, the kind of car that cost more than his mom made in a yurth. Back tire sagged low, flat against the pavement. The trunk hung open, a spare tire half pulled out, and next to it, struggling beneath a battered umbrella, was an old man. White silver mailed, probably late 60s or early 70s. His suit wrinkled and soaked, hands fumbling with their jack as it slipped and wobbled on the wet asphalt. Marcus slowed, his pulse still racing, rain running down his face as he took in the scene. No one else had stopped. Pedestrians hurried past, eyes down, shoulders hunched, pretending not to notice. A couple walked by on the other side of the street, the woman pulling her boyfriend along, her eyes flicking toward the man, then away just as fast. Marcus stood frozen, caught between instinct and ambition. His gaze drifted back to the glowing tower beyond the traffic. The interview was his shot, his one shot. He'd already lost precious minutes. His clothes were ruined. His confidence was hanging by a thread. Walk away. His brain whispered, someone else will help. You've worked too damn hard to throw it away now. But his feet didn't move. Instead, his mother's voice echoed in the back of his mind. The same words she drilled into him as a boy when he'd ignored the old woman struggling with groceries outside their apartment. You don't help people when it's convenient, Marcus. You help them because that's who you are. That's what separates a man from just another face in the crowd. His jaw tightened, his fingers curled tighter around the soaked leather portfolio. "Screw it, sir," Marcus called out, crossing the street, his shoe splashing through the flooded curb. "Let me help you with that." The old man looked up, surprise flashing across his face, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. I thought I had it," he stammered, voix thin with frustration and exhaustion, "but this damn jacket slipping because the ground's uneven." Marcus cut in, gently setting his portfolio carefully on the back seat, praying it wouldn't soak through any worse than it already had. He shrugged off his jacket, laying it on the wet pavement without hesitation. "You shouldn't be out in this storm, sir." The old man's eyes softened, the stubborn lines around his mouth easing. "Just slightly. Storm caught me off guard. My driver's out sick. I haven't changed a tire myself in 20 years. Marcus knelt down beside Decker, hands moving with practiced ease, checking the jack placement, adjusting the angle. The cold metal bit into his palms, but muscle memory took over. Summers in Southbridge, working with his uncle at the auto shop, changing flats on rusted pickups. It all came flooding back. "You know your way around a wrench," the old man observed, watching him work. Marcus chuckled under his breath, fingers tightening the bolts. "Uncle never let me drive his old Chevy till I could swap a tire in under 10 minutes. The man gave ass-off laugh, the sound barely cutting through the rain. "Smart man." The clock kept ticking. Marcus could feel every second sliding away like water down the street. But he didn't rush. He finished the job properly, standing up as the last bolt clicked into place. The old man straightened, offering a hand. "What's your name, son?" Marcus Reed. The man's eyes sharpened just for a moment, a flicker of curiosity. "You headed somewhere important?" Marcus hesitated, wiping grease and water onto his soaked slacks. His pulse thudded in his ears, the policy, his ears, the interview, the tower, his future. "Yeah," he said, finally, voice steady despite the storm. "The most important place I've ever gone." The sedan rolled to a smooth stop in front of Whitmore and Blake, its black paint slick with rains, engine purring low beneath, the steady thrum of water pelting the windshield. Marcus stared out the window, his heart sinking as his eyes locked on the building's towering glass facade. The lobby glowed with soft golden light beyond the entrance, clean and polished, untouched by the chaos still raging in the streets. His reflection in the car window stared back, soaked, wrinkled. Ames's. He barely recognized himself. "You sure you still want to go in there looking like that?" The old man askance from behind the wheel, his voice steady but not unkind. Marcus forced a tight smile, his jaw clenched. "I have to try." The man gave a small no dies, unreadable fingers tapping once against the steering wheel. Marcus shoved open the door, wincing as cold rain smacked him in the face. Again the storm had eased but not disappeared. Puddles reflected the marble steps leading up to the building like distorted mirrors. His shoes squelched with every step, soaked through the once polished leather, now dull and stained. His jacket hung heavy on his shoulders, useless against the water, and whined, his dress shirt plastered to his skin inside. The world changed. The lobby was another reality, entirely warm, silent. Immaculate high ceilings stretched above gleaming marble floors, abstract art installations hung on pristine white walls, a soft floral scent lingered in the air, clean and expensive, the kind of place where everything was designed to intimidate without a word. Marcus hesitated for half a second by the glass doors, conscious of the water dripping from his clothes onto the polished floor, his appearance drawing quick, subtle glances from the suited professionals moving through the space. Eamon, in an expensive coat, glanced at him with thinly veiled disapproval. A receptionist across the room whispered to her coworker, eyes darting toward Marcus, lips curving in a small amused smirk. He ignored them. He had to the security desk stood near the elevator, sleek and white like everything else in this place. Behind it, a tall guard in navy blazer tapped on a tablet, eyes flicking up as Marcus approached. His gaze sharpened the moment he took in Marcus's state, wet, disheveled, clearly out of place. The guard straightened, lips pressing into a thin professional line. "Good morning," Marcus said, forcing his voice steady, adjusting the soaked leather portfolio under his arm. "My name's Marcus Reed. I have a 9 o'clock interview with Whitmore and Blake's finance division." The guard's eyes narrowed, tapping at his tablet. Marcus could feel the seconds dragging out, his heartbeat pounding in his ears as the man scrolled through the list. "Yes, Mr. Reed," the guard finally said. "Finance team. 14th floor." He paused, fingers hovering above the screen. "It should let you know they're strict about timing." Marcus exhaled, nodding. "Once you understand." He cut himself off. There was no point explaining not to him. Vegard gestured toward the elevator bank. "You can try, but no promises." Marcus thanked him quietly and walked across the floor, every soggy step echoing embarrassingly loud against the stony. His reflection stared back at him in the mirrored elevator door, shirt clinging to his chest collar, limp cuffs, wrinkled pants stained with street water. His tie looked like it had been melted onto his skin. The professional image he'd spent 2 years building was gone. All that remained was the young man from Southbridge standing in a place that wasn't built for him. The elevator didn't get right up, was too fast, too quiet, and when the doors opened onto the 14th floor, the space beyond felt like anotherlive of a world he didn't belong to. Dark hardwood floors, frosted glass partitions framed cityscape photographs lining the walls. A receptionist in a sleek gray blazer sat behind a curved desk, typing briskly, her fingers slow as she looked up and saw him. Surprise flickered across her carefully made-up face, followed by a brief professional mask of neutrality. "Good morning." Marcus began, clearing his throat, adjusting his grip on the damp portfolio. "I'm Marcus Reed. I had a 9 o'clock interview scheduled." She checked the clock on the wall behind her. 9:18. Her eyes softened slightly, but her posture stayed firm. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reed," she said, voice low but not unkind. "That would have been with Mr. Calloway. Unfortunately, he's moved on to the next candidates. He has a tight schedule." Marcus's stomach twisted. He had known this was coming, but hearing it aloud, feeling the finality in her tone, made it land like a fist to the ribs. He opened his mouth, struggling to stay composed. "No, I'm late. The storm. I tried to get here. There was an elderly man stranded with a flat tire. I couldn't just..." She lifted a hand gently, her eyes flicking toward the office doors beyond. "Mr. Reed, I understand, but Mr. Calloway..." Her voice trailed off. There was no leeway here, no room for exceptions. Marcus swallowed hard, the words lodged in his throat, turning to bitter dust. "Could you at least tell him I came..." His voice cracked slightly despite his efforts to sound steady. "That I tried." He opened his portfolio, pulling out one of the few surviving resumes. The edges warped, the ink on the corners smudged but mostly legible. He offered it to her with careful fingers. The receptionist thesit, then took it, nodding faintly. "I'll make sure he gets this." She premised, a trace of sympathy softening her professional expression for a moment. Their eyes held hers, calm, his raw with frustration and quiet heartbreak. Then the moment passed. Marcus turned toward the elevators, his steps heavy, shoes still squishing softly with every move. His shoulders sagged under the weight of the morning, the storm, the lost opportunity, the sting of knowing he had done the right thing and still lost. Elevator doors opened with a sterile chime. He stepped inside, staring blankly at his reflection in the mirrored walls, watching the water drip from his coat onto the clean floor. His chest tight, neat as the doors slid shut, cutting him off from the office, from the dream, from everything he'd fought so hard for. Therad down was silent, too quiet. The polished lobby greeted him again, with its sharp edges and clean lines, as he stepped back out into the world. The storm had eased, sunlight cut through thickening clouds, glinting off the wet pavement outside. Marcus paused near the glass door, staring out at the street, his jaw clenched, throat tight. The world kept moving. Cars honked, people hurried past, no one noticing the soaked young man standing there, carrying disappointment like a second skin. He didn't rage, hadn't cry. He just walked out the door, back into the city, back into the unknown, dreams trailing behind him like the rain still dripping from his ruined jacket. The morning sun over Southbridge didn't care about Marcus Reed's disappointment. It pushed through the thin curtains of his apartment, casting pale strips of light across the peeling paint of the walls and the small battered kitchen table, where he sat hunched over his laptop. The hum of old radiators filled the silence outside. Sirens wailed somewhere down the block. Life in Southbridge Never slowed for anybody's bad day, Marcus stared at the glowing screen in front of him. His fingers frozen over the keyboard, his resume stared back, cursor blinking like a quiet reminder of everything that had gone wrong. The words blurred the creases in the leather portfolio on the table beside him. Caught his eye edges, still warped, the surface stained from rain and street grime. He had dried it as best he could last night, laying it by the old fan in the corner, but the damage was there, permanent like a scar. His suit jacket hung from a nail on the wall, faint outline of water stains ghosted across the fabric. No dry cleaner in the world able to erase them completely. Symbol maybe, or just another quiet defeat. His phone buzzed against the tabletop, jolting him out of his haze. His mom's face filled the screen, soft eyes, the same determined curve of the jaw he saw in the mirror every morning. He hesitated, thumb hovering over the answer button. He hadn't told her yet, not the whole truth. She'd been so proud when Heg at the interview. She'd even mailed him his grandfather's cufflinks wrapped in tissue paper, still carrying the faint scent of her lavender soap. The same cufflinks now sitting in the pocket of his ruined jacket. Phone kept buzzing. Marcus took a breath and pressed accept, forcing his voice steady. "Hey Ma, baby, I've been thinking about you all morning," she said, the familiar warmth of her voice cutting through his tangled frustration. "Any news? Did you hear back from that big shot company?" His mouth open, the words sitting bitter on his tongue. How could he explain it? That he'd made it all the way there, that he'd sacrificed everything to do the right thing and still lost that. No one cared about a young black man from Southbridge with good intentions and wet clothes. Before he could answer, another call buzzed in, flashing across the top of the screen. "Unknown number, Chicago area code, Merplat, ma'am. Ma, I got to take this." "Could be about a job, of course, honey. Go get him." Hess switched lines, nerves tightening in his chest like a coiled spring. "Hello, Mr. Reed." A woman's voice, crisp, professional, with a smooth confidence off Simeon, used to making important calls. "This is Natalie Quinn, executive assistant to Mr. Richard Whitmore. I'm calling on his behalf to invite you to a meeting this afternoon at 2 o'clock. If you're available." Marcus blinked, the world tilting slightly under him. He gripped the phone tighter, his voice barely catching up to his racing thoughts. "Wait, sorry, did you say Mr. Whitmore?" "The COI, sir." Her tone didn't waver. "The meeting will be on the executive floor, 82nd level. Would you like directions to the building?" His heart pounded, every instinct screaming that this couldn't be real. It had to be some misunderstanding, a courtesy rejection, maybe a formality, but he heard nothing in her voice to suggest that just quiet efficiency like this was the most normal request in the world. "No. I know where it is." "Excellent. Well, look forward to seeing you, Mr. Reed." The line clicked dead, leaving Marcus frozen, phone still pressed to his ear. For a moment, all he could hear was the low hum off the apartment, the distant sound of a TV from the neighboring unit, the rhythmic tap of his heartbeat pounding in his chest. He set the phone down slowly, eyes fixed on the leather portfolio. This couldn't be happening. Marcus shot up from the chair, nearly knocking his coffee mug onto the floor. He snatched his jacket from the wall, running his fingers over the stained fabric, his mind already racing through what came next. This time there wouldn't rain, no rushing through flooded streets, no missed chances by 12:30. His suit was pressed as crisp as it could get under the circumstances. His shoes, though scarred from the storm, were polished until the leather gleamed faintly again. He'd spent nearly an hour buffing them, as if scrubbing away the memory of the soaked streets, the humiliation in that marble lobby. The cufflinks clicked into place at his wrist, silver, simple, the faintest reflection of light glinted off them as he straightened his sleeves. At exactly 1:17 p.m. a yellow cab pulled up in front of the gleaming Whitmore and Blake building. The storm clouds were gone now, replaced by a clear, sharp blue sky that stretched over the city like a fresh start. The air was crisp, the sidewalk still damp but drying fast under the sunlight. Marcus stepped out, adjusted his tie, and stared up at the tower. It didn't seem so impossibly tall this time, still intimidating, still the symbol of wealth and power he'd spent years trying to reach. But today it wasn't chasing him. Today he'd been invited inside. The lobby felt familiar now, the same polished floors, The same hushed air of quiet authority, but the stares were different. The man at the security desk barely glanced up before scanning his name, handing over a black access badge with a gold emblem shimmering under the lights. Executive access. The guard confirmed. His voice held no judgment. This time just protocol. Marcus walked toward the elevators, the black badge cool in his hand, his pulse steady despite the surge of adrenaline rising beneath his skin. The mirror-red elevator doors slid shut, his reflection staring back. Sharper now, steadier. A man still had questions, still carried doubt, but wasn't running anymore. As the numbers climbed higher, his chest tightened, but not with fear, something else, anticipation, possibility. 82 floors later, the doors opened to a different world entirely. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched along the hall, pouring sunlight across a space filled with clean lines, expensive furniture, and carefully placed artwork that probably cost more than his entire apartment building. A woman in a navy suit approached with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged here. Her smile was professional but not cold. "Mr. Reed, I'm Natalie Quinn. We spoke earlier." "Yeah, Marcus," replied, his voice steady despite the quiet storm still pulsing under his skin. "We did. Mr. Whitmore will see you shortly. Can I get you anything while you wait? Coffee, water? Water's good." "Thank you," Natalie returned quickly, with a crystal glass untouched gleaming under the sunlight. She gestured toward the tall double doors at the end of the corridor. "When he's ready, I'll let you know. Make yourself comfortable." Marcus sat, glass in hand, his gaze fixed on the doors that stood between him and the answers waiting on the other side. His heartbeat steady, every breath slower, measured. He didn't know why this was happening, hadn't know what waited beyond those doors, but for the first time in days, cautious hope began to rise. Slow, quiet tumble. The double doors clicked open with a quiet, deliberate sound that carried more weight than it should have. Natalie stepped back slightly, her voice low but clear. "Mr. Whitmore will see Yano." Marcus stood, the black badge cool against his chest, his fingers tightening briefly around the leather portfolio. He let out a slow breath and stepped forward, each stride steady despite the quiet thud of his heartbeat in his ears. The office beyond the doors wasn't what he expected. It wasn't overly grand or dripping in excess. It was large, yes, but understated. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the sprawl of Chicago below, skyscrapers punching through the clear afternoon sky. The furniture was sleek, dark wood, leather, marble, all expensive, all complete. Spoke of old money, quiet confidence, and someone who had nothing left to prove. A high-backed chair faced the windows, the silhouette of a man just visible against the sunlight. Slowly the chair turned. The face that met Marcus wasn't unfamiliar. Silver hair, sharp eyes, the same steady expression of the old man stranded on the street, wrestling with a flat tire and a stubborn jack. But here in this space, he looked different, not vulnerable, not frustrated, just powerful. Richard Whitmore rose from his chair with ease of someone used to commanding a room. Without raising his voice, "Mr. Reed," he said simply, extending a hand across the polished desk. "Good to see you again." Marcus hesitated a fraction of a second before stepping forward, gripping the older man's hand. It was firm, grounded, the kind of handshake that carried weight. I didn't realize," Marcus admitted quietly, the word sticking slightly in his throat. "Out there on the street, I didn't know that I was the man who signed your interview invitation." Richard finished, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "That's exactly why it mattered." Marcus blinked, uncertainty tightening, and hissed, I missed the interview. I thought that was it." Richard gestured to the chairs arranged across from his desk, moving with practiced quiet ease. "Sit." Marcus obeyed, sinking into the cool leather, his hands resting on the damp, worn portfolio now perched on his lap. Richard didn't speak immediately. He moved to the windows, clasping his hands behind his back, his gaze drifting over the city, like a man surveying his legacy. 58 years ago, Richard began, his voice calm, carrying the weight of memory. "I stood in a factory outside Pittsburgh, cheap suit, nervous. Out of my depth, I asked a man 3 times my age to believe in an idea I could barely articulate." He turned slightly the sunlight outlining the lines on his face, the sharp intelligence in his eyes. Hesed. Yes, changed my life. This company, it doesn't exist without that moment. Marcus watched him, every muscle tight with focus, his heart pounding, not from fear now, but from the possibility creeping in at the edges. Richard moved back to his desk, opening a drawer with quiet precision. He pulled out their portfolio Marcus had left behind days ago, the edges still warped, stain berained, the pages inside slightly curled. You left this in my car, Richard said, placing it gently on the desk between them. I took the liberty of reading it. Marcus swallowed, his throat dry, ice flicking to the battered portfolio. Part of him wanted to apologize for its condition, the other part too aware of nothing about the storm about that morning could be undone now. Richard opened the folder, sliding a few of the pages forward. Your market analysis on Southeast Asia, sharp. Your cover letter, honest, personal, rare. He looked up, eye steady, but none of that's why you're here. Marcus's fingers twitched, slight liner stirring. It's not. Richard shook his head. Once measured, deliberate. Have been hiring people for decades. Marcus, I can't teach finance. I can train Simeon to read a balance sheet or build a portfolio, but I can't teach character. His words hung in the space between them, simple, heavy with meaning. Most people standing in your shoes that morning, wet, cold, late, would have kept walking. I wouldn't have blamed them. You didn't. Marcus stayed quiet, the memory of the rain, the frustration, the quiet voice of his mother in his head all flooding back at once. You stopped. Richard continued, you helped, not because there were cameras, not because someone was watching, but because it was the right thing to do. He sat back, folding his hands calmly on the desk. I've built this company on decisions made in quiet moments when no one's watching. Fat morning, you showed me everything I needed to know. Marcus's throat tight, Nita. Not of disbelief, pride, and the quiet ache of validation rising all at once to appreciate that. Sir, more than I can explain. Richard's eyes softened, slight life corners crinkling. I'm not offering you an analyst position, Marcus, not the entry-level spot you came here for a fleeting second. Marcus' heart sank, words landing heavy, sharp. But Richard wasn't finished. I'm offering you something else. Helen forward, voice dropping with quiet certainty. You'll work directly with Miss Special Assistant. You'll sit in rooms most people spend a decade clawing their way toward. You'll listen, learn, observe. It won't be easy. It won't always be comfortable, but you'll leave with a foundation no textbook or classroom can buy. Marcus stared at him, the offer settling into his chest like something solid, real and terrifying in its size. Well, me. The question slipped out before it could stop it, raw, vulnerable, coated in years of knowing how many doors were locked before he even reached them. Richard smiled, the kind of smile that came from remembering how it felt to be young, uncertain, underestimated. Because someone once believed in me before I deserved it, and it changed everything. He extended his hand again, calm, steady, the weight of opportunity sitting between them. Marcus reached out, his fingers closing around Richard Whitmore with quiet strength, not as the nervous, drenched young man who had knocked on locked doors, but as someone seen, chosen, respected. The rainstorm hadn't drowned his chance, it had revealed it, and for the first time in his life, Marcus Reed walked toward his future, knowing he'd earned every step. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.